Thank you, Ken Corla. I just want to ask the Minister what's his view on the various different proposals that we might have immunity stamps on passports, or more likely digital identities created to show that a person has been vaccinated against COVID-19 for the purposes of travel, both European and long haul.
Thanks, Deputy. Passports are internationally recognised travel documents which attest to the identity and nationality of the bearer. The Irish passport is an invaluable identity document, and its integrity is paramount to the maintenance of the level of visa-free access which Irish citizens enjoy to 93 countries worldwide today. Any changes to the format of the Irish passport must be fully compliant with International Civil Aviation Organisation regulations and standards. The ICAO is a UN specialised agency which defines in detail the required format for passports. My department currently has no plans to introduce a COVID-19 stamp on passports to demonstrate that travellers have received any vaccination against the virus. With regard to passengers arriving to Ireland from overseas, all such passengers, with limited exemptions, are required to complete a COVID-19 passenger locator form. The form supports a system of engagement with arriving passengers, including the targeting of key public health messages through SMS and email. The form can also be used for contact tracing. The COVID-19 passenger locator form is now available online. The Government decided at its meeting on the 10th of November that persons claiming exemption from the request to restrict movement on the basis of a negative PCR test up to 3 days before departure will be required to indicate on the passenger locator form that they have had such a test. This will require a further amendment to the passenger locator form, and work is underway within the Department of Health and across Government to give effect to the decision. But I would like to come back to this issue when there's a further question, because I think there are possibilities to also accommodate vaccination when that becomes available, to be able to give reassurance on international travel.
Thank you, Minister. And first of all, I agree Irish passports and their value when travelling. Now, you spoke about the passenger locator form, but the truth is, Minister, that relies on goodwill. That relies on people following the rules. And many people do, and many people will. But it's not on an evidence base. And given that the aviation sector is so important to our economy, to our tourism sector, etc., are there any discussions at European level? Because I know it'll have to be at that level, but are there any discussions around this issue? And maybe it doesn't need to be on a passport, it might be a digital app or an identity that people would be able to, a digital identity that would be able to state that the person had received a vaccination. Because whether you listen to the head of Qantas or other airlines, it does seem as if this is coming down the track. There have been discussions in the UK Parliament around this. And what I want to ask is, are we in any way preparing for this eventuality?
Yes is the answer to that question, Deputy. I mean, we would like to see more coordination at an EU level. There's already been quite a lot, though, in terms of the traffic light system, which is now providing a lot more certainty. I mean, the truth is that very, very few people are travelling anyway, and the government guidelines are very clear that, that any international travel should be limited to essential travel under Level 5 restrictions and guidelines. But we are working towards a situation where we hope that can change as we move into next year. The passenger locator form is not something that relies on goodwill or voluntary cooperation. It is a legal requirement to fill out a passenger locator form before you come into the country or as you come into the country. It is also a legal requirement to fill it out accurately. And if you put false information on the passenger locator form, you're breaking the law, and there's quite severe penalties for that. And so if you are someone who is travelling and exempt from the restrictions because you're an essential worker or because you have taken a test and you're coming from an orange region, well then you will have to put that in the passenger locator form, and you'll have to do that truthfully, or you're breaking the law. And in my view, I hope we will be able to accommodate something similar when vaccination becomes available, so that as people come into Ireland, if they have been vaccinated and if that is recognised, they should be able to complete a passenger locator form that recognises that in the context of, obviously we have to take public health advice on this, but my expectation is that if people are vaccinated, they will be able to avoid the restrictions that currently apply to international travel as well, certainly from orange locations. So we are working on this, Deputy. The more we can do together across the European Union, I think the more effective it can be. But Ireland needs to protect its own citizens in the context of the potential threat of reseeding, if you like, of this virus through international travel if we're not careful.
Margaret Hachta.
Thank you, Minister. And I agree, we need more cooperation and coordination at European level. You talked about the traffic light system, and you tell me that the passenger locator form is a legal requirement. It absolutely is. But the truth is, what follow-up is there? How do we know that the terms and conditions are being adhered to? How many people have travelled through Dublin Airport since we put it in place? And how many people have been prosecuted for not following it up? Because some people don't. The vast majority do, but some people don't. And I'm just saying that when the vaccine is becoming used more widely, more and more people will travel. And unless we want to restrict that travel, we need to find a way to make it work. And that's really what I'm asking you to think about and to start planning for, Minister.
Margaret.
Yeah, no, I can assure you we are thinking about it, and we've been thinking about it all year in the context of international travel. And I think, you know, it would be safe to say, and we've taken a lot of criticism from the airlines, and there's been huge frustration in our airports as a result of it. But you know, Ireland has really been one of the most restrictive countries in the European Union in terms of international travel, and you know, we believe for good reason. Despite the fact that Ireland relies on air travel more than any other country in the European Union, arguably, with the exception maybe of Malta and Cyprus. And so, you know, we do want to try to change an approach, but at the same time ensure that we're continuing to be compliant with public health advice, so that we don't, following an enormous effort and enormous sacrifices from people, that we don't reintroduce the virus again through international travel if it's not managed right. So this is a difficult balance to get right. We've also made a decision that we're not going to have mandatory quarantine and enforcing that in terms of knocking on people's doors and homes. Instead, we have introduced the mandatory element of this policy in the context of the passenger locator form and filling it out accurately, and that being a legal requirement. And by and large, it's not a perfect system, but by and large, I think it's worked reasonably well. It's limited international travel significantly, and it has kept the number of clusters linked to international travel at a very, very low level in Ireland. That's not to say it's perfect, but we will continue to try and evolve this policy in a way that facilitates international travel, but in a safe way.